Rice. People all over the world eat it every day. It's in your pantry right now. You cook it for your children, your loved ones. You completely trust it, except for some of the rice in your pantry that's currently contaminated in ways you'll never find out. Buried deep within FDA reports, what kind of rice does your family eat? 3 or 4 times a week, and you have no idea what's in the bag. That's why today I'm going to expose 6 dangerous rice brands you should avoid and 2 safer ones you can actually trust. Let's get started. Number 1. Goya Canilla Extra Long Grain Rice. I grabbed this bag the way most people do off a bright shelf at Walmart, next to the cheaper store brands and the premium ones that cost $1 more. You'll see it at Target, Kroger, and in Hispanic markets coast to coast. The front says extra long grain. The back says grown in the United States. It feels like the safest kind of boring white rice. Clean grains, zero drama. I poured a cup into my palm, let it slide through my fingers, listened to that dry, papery whisper. No smell, no visible dust, no warning. And that's the problem. The risk here doesn't show up in your kitchen. It starts in the soil. Consumer Reports testing has shown that southern U.S. long grain rice can carry about 40 to 50% higher inorganic arsenic than rice grown in California. That number matters because rice isn't a once-in-a-while food. In a lot of homes, it's 3 to 4 meals a week, sometimes more. Over time, that turns a small difference into a steady dose, and the historical trail is ugly. From the 1960s through the 1980s, arsenic-based pesticides were used heavily in southern cotton agriculture. Arsenic doesn't rinse away. It lingers in soil for decades. Rice pulls it up efficiently, so when a bag like this doesn't tell you whether the grain came from Arkansas, Louisiana, or Texas, and it doesn't publish batch-level arsenic results, you're not buying food. You're buying uncertainty. The FDA set an action level of 100 parts per billion, ppb, for arsenic in infant rice cereal in 2020 because babies are vulnerable. But adults, there's no federal limit for rice on your dinner plate. That gap matters when the exposure is chronic. And it's not abstract. A 2023 exposure analysis reported that people who eat rice daily can show urinary arsenic levels up to 44% higher than people who don't. That's the kind of quiet number that doesn't trend on social media, but it changes the math of everyday meals. I'm not telling you this rice will hurt you tomorrow. I'm saying if you eat it routinely for years, the risk becomes a long game. The fix isn't panic, it's control. Choose rice from lower-risk regions, and if you're finishing a bag you already own, cook it like pasta, use excess water, and drain it. Some tests show that approach can cut arsenic by 40 to 60%. You shouldn't have to do that to feel safe, but until brands prove what's in the bag, you protect yourself. Number 2. Great Value Long Grain Rice. This one is the definition of American routine. Huge bag, low price, and the quiet assumption that it's just rice. I opened it, scooped a handful, watched the grains tumble perfectly normal. That's what makes it dangerous in a different way. Great Value is Walmart's private label, and its long grain supply chain ties into major southern rice production, including Arkansas, one of the biggest rice states in the country. If you're eating long grain rice from that region, you're back in the same contamination geography Consumer Reports keeps flagging. But here's the twist. With a store brand, you usually get even less transparency. No publicly posted batch COA. No consistent heavy metal numbers you can check against anything. Just a price tag and trust. And trust is exactly what the rice industry leans on, because the moment you ask, what's the inorganic arsenic level in this specific bag, the conversation stops. Minimum compliance isn't the same thing as a clean choice. It only means the product is allowed to exist. When rice becomes a staple again, 3 to 4 times a week, year after year, uncertainty turns into exposure. So my conclusion on Great Value isn't dramatic. It's practical. If this is your default rice, it shouldn't be. Rotate grains, shift to California-grown options, and treat cheap staple like what it really is, an everyday decision with long-term consequences. Number 3. Zatarain's Enriched Parboiled Rice. I bought this one because the word enriched keeps fooling people. It sounds responsible. It sounds upgraded. The bag promises consistency, nutrition, reliability. I poured it into a pot and watched the grains sink. Parboiled rice looks sturdy, almost engineered to survive mistakes, and that's exactly how it's sold: stable, forgiving, better than regular white rice. But parboiling isn't just a cooking shortcut. It's an industrial process. The rice is soaked, steamed, and dried while it's still in the husk. That step pushes nutrients from the bran into the grain. It also pushes whatever else is there. Multiple studies have shown that parboiling can change how inorganic arsenic migrates, in some cases driving more of it into the edible portion of the rice. That matters when the starting soil already carries a burden. In the U.S., parboiled long-grain rice is often sourced from the same southern regions we've already talked about, so you're stacking risks, geography plus processing. The label won't tell you that. It will tell you about added vitamins, not about arsenic levels. And here's the uncomfortable number. There is still no federal arsenic limit for adult rice consumption. None. Only the 100 parts per billion action level for infant cereal set in 2020. That means a product can legally sit on shelves even if long-term exposure is questionable. When I cooked this rice, it tasted fine. That's what makes it dangerous. You don't feel the accumulation. You don't feel the kidneys filtering a little more every year. You don't feel the cardiovascular strain building quietly. If parboiled rice is a staple in your house, week after week, that enriched halo becomes a blindfold. My conclusion here is simple. Parboiled doesn't mean safer. In some cases, it means the opposite. If you have kids, if rice is a daily food, this is one of those choices that deserves a second look. Number 4, Ben's Original Boil-In Bag Rice. This one is all about convenience. Tear the box, drop the bag. 10 minutes later, dinner is done. I stood over the stove watching that plastic pouch bounce in boiling water and asked myself a basic question. Why is rice being cooked inside plastic at all? The brand doesn't tell you where the rice comes from. It doesn't publish batch-level contaminant data. What it does sell is time, and time is expensive, so people stop asking questions. But research on food packaging keeps raising the same red flags. Heating plastic, especially in boiling water, can release microplastics and chemical additives into food. The industry response is always the same. The levels are within safety limits. But safety limits are usually based on single exposure testing, not what happens when you repeat the same shortcut 2 or 3 times a week for 10 or 20 years. Nobody has long-term data for that. And then there's the quality control record. In 2024, Ben's Original issued a Class 2 recall for multiple ready rice products after reports of small stones inside sealed pouches. Let that sink in. A product marketed as ready to eat made it through processing, packaging, and nationwide distribution with foreign material inside. That's not a fluke. That's a system failure. Stones aren't just unpleasant, they crack teeth. They cause mouth injuries. For older adults or people on blood thinners, a small cut can turn into an ER visit. I held that boil-in bag pouch in my hand and realized something. Convenience removes your ability to inspect, rinse, or control anything. You're trusting a sealed system completely. My conclusion isn't anti-convenience, it's pro-choice. If you have time to boil a bag for 10 minutes, you have time to cook rice in a pot and skip the plastic, the opacity, and the recall roulette. This isn't about fear, it's about not letting speed decide what ends up in your body year after year. Number 5, 365 by Whole Foods Market Rice. This one surprised me the most, and honestly, it bothered me. I bought it at Whole Foods, the place people go when they're trying to do the right thing. Clean aisles, soft lighting, words like organic, sustainable, responsibly sourced floating in the air. The 365 label is calm and minimal. It feels safe before you even touch it. I poured the rice into a glass bowl, rinsed it slowly, watched the cloudy water drain away. Everything about the experience said, this is the good option. Then I read the data. In 2025, a report published by Healthy Babies Bright Futures analyzed dozens of rice products sold in the U.S. Their findings were blunt. 100% of the rice samples tested contained detectable arsenic. Not some, all of them. Even more concerning, more than 25% of the samples exceeded the inorganic arsenic level set for infant rice cereal, which, again, is 100 parts per billion. That benchmark exists because arsenic exposure during early development is linked to long-term neurological and immune effects, but adults don't get a separate line of protection. We're expected to self-regulate. 365 products were named in the broader discussion around transparency and warning labels, not because they were illegal, not because they triggered a recall, but because consumers were never told that organic doesn't mean low in heavy metals. Soil doesn't care about branding. Arsenic is naturally occurring. Organic standards don't test for it. And when a brand builds trust without showing numbers, that trust becomes a liability. The rice tasted fine. That's the cruel part. You can eat this for years and never feel a thing until the exposure adds up. My conclusion here isn't that 365 is uniquely dangerous. It's that the premium image creates a false sense of security. When a product looks clean, people stop asking questions, and that silence is where risk hides. Number 6. Four Sisters Organic Brown Rice. Brown rice has a reputation. Whole grain, more fiber, more nutrients. I've heard people say they switched to brown rice specifically for their health. I opened the bag, and you can see the difference immediately. The darker color, the heavier texture. That outer bran layer is what makes brown rice brown. It's also where arsenic, cadmium, and lead concentrate the most. Multiple analyses have shown that brown rice can contain 20 to 80% higher inorganic arsenic levels than white rice from the same region because the bran is left intact. In the same 2025 HBBF analysis, brown rice products consistently ranked among the highest for total heavy metal load. Again, not illegal. Again, not recalled. But the pattern is clear. Brown rice eaten occasionally is one thing. Brown rice eaten daily, as a staple, is another, especially for kids. Especially for pregnant women, especially for anyone trying to be health conscious without realizing they're increasing one type of exposure while reducing another. I cooked a pot and tasted it plain, nutty, dense, satisfying. I understood why people commit to it, but commitment is exactly the problem. When something becomes routine, the math changes. Chronic exposure doesn't announce itself. It accumulates quietly. My conclusion on Four Sisters and brown rice as a category is about context. This isn't a villain food. It's a food that needs limits. Rotate it. Don't anchor your diet to it. And don't assume that more fiber automatically means safer. Health isn't about one nutrient. It's about the full picture, including what the label doesn't mention. After digging through recall notices, lab reports, and decades of agricultural data, I needed to answer a simple question. If the problem isn't rice itself, then what does a safer choice actually look like? Not perfect. Not detox. Just demonstrably lower risk, with fewer unknowns. That's where two names kept coming up, not in ads, but in testing language, sourcing details, and something most brands avoid. Numbers. Number 1. Lundberg Family Farms. I drove out of town to a store that carries their California-grown rice and picked up a bag without the marketing goggles on. No dramatic promises, no miracle claims, just a quiet statement of origin. California. That matters. California rice fields use Sierra Nevada snowmelt for irrigation and don't share the same arsenic legacy as former southern cottonland. But what pushed Lundberg into a different category for me wasn't geography alone. It was disclosure. The company publishes heavy metal testing information and explains how their results compare to international benchmarks. According to their own data, average cadmium levels in their rice test below 13 parts per billion, a figure they contextualize against limits discussed by EFSA and Codex. That's not a guarantee of zero risk. It's a signal of accountability. I cooked the rice the same way I cooked everything else. Same pot, same water, same time. It tasted like rice, nothing flashy. And that's the point. The value here isn't flavor, it's knowing that someone measured what most brands ignore. In a country where adult rice has no federal arsenic limit, voluntary transparency becomes meaningful. My conclusion isn't that Lundberg is clean, it's that they're measurable. And when exposure is cumulative, measurable beats mysterious every time. Number 2. Kokuho Rose California Medium Grain Rice. This one doesn't get talked about in health circles much, and that's almost a relief. Kokuho Rose shows up in Japanese-American kitchens, sushi counters, family dinners, medium grain, grown in California, consistent sourcing. When Consumer Reports looked at regional differences, California-grown rice consistently tested lower for inorganic arsenic than long-grain rice from the southern U.S. That doesn't make it immune. It makes it statistically less risky when eaten often. I poured the grains into my hand. Shorter, heavier. They cook softer, stick together slightly, and they're forgiving. That matters for real life. People stick with foods that work. Kokuho doesn't rely on organic halos or wellness language. It relies on the same advantage Lundberg does, geography. When you shift regions, you shift exposure. That's the lever most consumers actually control. Here's my bottom line for this section. Safer doesn't mean safe forever. It means lower odds over time. California-grown rice, whether from a transparent producer like Lundberg or a consistent staple like Kokuho Rose, reduces one major variable, arsenic-heavy soil history. Pair that with smart cooking methods, extra water, thorough draining, and you're stacking the deck in your favor. Not chasing purity, just choosing less risk, meal after meal. By the time I reached this point, one thing became clear. The biggest danger with rice isn't that it's toxic. It's that it's trusted by default. Rice slips into the category of foods we stop questioning. It's cheap. It's filling. It's been around forever. And that's exactly why small risks matter more here than almost anywhere else. When something shows up on your plate 3, 4, sometimes 7 times a week, the long-term math starts to matter more than the label on the bag. So here's what choosing safer rice actually looks like, stripped of marketing and fear. First, origin matters more than variety. Rice grown in California consistently tests lower in inorganic arsenic than long-grain rice grown in the southern United States. That's not a theory. It's a pattern seen across multiple testing rounds over many years. If the bag doesn't clearly say where the rice is grown, assume you're missing information, not getting a deal. Second, be cautious with long-grain southern rice as a daily staple. That doesn't mean it's forbidden. It means frequency changes risk. Eating it once in a while isn't the same as building your diet around it. Studies looking at exposure show that people who eat rice daily can carry up to 44% higher arsenic levels than those who don't. That number doesn't care whether the rice was cheap, organic, imported, or familiar. Third, understand the trade-offs with brown rice. Keeping the bran means more fiber, yes. It also means higher concentrations of arsenic, cadmium, and lead. Data suggests brown rice can contain 20 to 80% more inorganic arsenic than white rice from the same source. That doesn't make brown rice bad. It makes it something to rotate, not anchor your diet to every single day. Fourth, question convenience formats. Parboiled rice, boil-in-bag rice, microwave pouches. These are sold as solutions to time, not safety. Parboiling can change how arsenic moves into the grain. Cooking rice inside plastic removes your ability to rinse, inspect, or control anything. Convenience compresses decision-making, and compressed decisions hide risk. Fifth, how you cook rice matters. This is one of the few areas where consumers actually have leverage. Cooking rice in excess water, 6 to 10 cups of water per cup of rice, and draining it afterward has been shown to reduce arsenic levels by 40 to 60%. It's not perfect. It's not a detox. It's a practical mitigation step you can use tonight. And finally, demand transparency over reassurance. Organic certification doesn't test for heavy metals. Premium packaging doesn't lower exposure. The brands worth trusting are the ones that show numbers, explain sourcing, and acknowledge limits instead of hiding behind silence. I want to be clear about something. This isn't about turning rice into the enemy. It's about adjusting awareness to match reality. The FDA set an arsenic action level of 100 parts per billion for infant rice cereal in 2020 because infants are vulnerable. Adults are vulnerable too, just more slowly. The difference is that no one set a limit for us. That means responsibility shifts downstream, onto households, onto shoppers, onto you. So here's my ask. Tonight, check your pantry. Look at where your rice comes from. Ask whether it's something you eat occasionally or something you rely on every day. If this video helped you see rice differently, not with fear, but with clarity, share it with someone who cooks for others, because food safety isn't about perfection. It's about making quieter, better choices over time, and those choices add up.